Some of you may have read a remarkable short story sometime during your school years by D.H. Lawrence, which was titled The Rocking Horse Winner. I wonder if you remember how the story begins. It's a very haunting tale about a family living above its means. The mother is considered by friends and neighbors to be the perfect mother, in spite of the fact that deep down she knows she has difficulty loving her 3 children. It's important to the husband to keep up the pretense of success, the large house staffed with servants, but they're living on the edge, just like many families today. Listen as D.H. Lawrence describes this family's life situation. And so the house came to be haunted by the unspoken phrase, "There must be more money, there must be more money." The children could hear it all the time, though nobody said it aloud. They heard it at Christmas when the expensive and splendid toys filled the nursery. Behind the shining modern rocking horse, behind the smart doll's house, a voice would start whispering, "There must be more money, there must be more money." And the children would stop playing to listen for a moment. They would look into each other's eyes to see if they had all heard. And each one saw in the eyes of the other two that they too had heard. There must be more money. There must be more money. It came whispering from the springs of the still swaying rocking horse, and even the horse bending his wooden champion head heard it. The big doll sitting so pink and smirking in her new pram could hear it quite plainly and seemed to be smirking all the more self-consciously because of it. The foolish puppy too had took the place of the teddy bear. He was looking so extraordinarily foolish for no other reason but that he heard the secret whisper all over the house, "There must be more money." And that's the family backdrop to the story, The Rocking Horse Winner. Quite an extraordinary picture. There must be more money. There must be more money. And I wonder if there are any homes in our community today that are haunted in the same way. Hearing that unspoken voice saying, "There must be more money. There must be more money." I want to talk about financial freedom. Jesus said in our gospel lesson, no servant can serve 2 masters. Remember that? Either he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. One or the other. You cannot serve both God and money. That's the challenge for today. We want to break the grip money has on our lives. We want to affirm that Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is our God and our only God. We want to affirm that the God who manifested himself in Jesus of Nazareth is our God. This is who we are. That's why we're here in this room at this time. "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." We want God to be our God, not material possessions. Yet, we do live in a materialistic society. Fairly or unfairly, people judge us by our possessions. And it costs so much to live nowadays. But we know we don't need everything we have, much less everything we want. And it troubles us. Like the rich man God called a fool, we keep needing bigger and bigger garages and barns to hold all our stuff. And here, in this community, sometimes people get rid of their stuff out of their barn, and we end up storing it in our barn for the next rummage sale, and it gets recycled, and more stuff comes in. I mean, think about that, right? How do we pull ourselves out of that cycle? Let's remember what I said last week. Jesus is not anti-money. It's not. He understood the place that money had in our lives. Jesus told that strange parable of a manager who's accused by his boss of wasting the boss's possessions. And he says, okay, I'm calling in the auditors. Give an account. You're not going to be my manager anymore. Isn't it interesting that the boss, the owner, said, by the way, you're fired and I'm going to do the audit. It's not, I want an audit and then we'll see whether or not you keep your job, right? Okay. So, there's the manager. The guy's been in management for a long time, no doubt. Giving his notice. What was he going to do? Now, if any of you find yourself in that position, I hope you don't do what he did. Even though it sounds cruel, I guess maybe there is some common sense in the fact that some places escort folks out of the building the minute they are terminated. But the manager said, I'm not strong enough today. Can't do physical work. Got too much pride to beg. I know what I'm going to do. When I'm unemployed, people will welcome me into their homes. And so he goes to all the people that owe his master debts. And he asks the first one, how much do you owe my master? He says, 900 gallons of olive oil. Now, if you've ever seen an olive oil operation, that's a lot of olives for 900 gallons of olive oil, right? And he says, take your bill. Here's the ledger. Change the number, 450. Then he goes to the second and says, how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat. Well, here's your bill. Make the number 800. He spent the last few days of his employment defrauding his employer. Costing his employer a lot of money. Now, we would normally expect the employer to be livid. But instead, and this is proof, I think, that Jesus had a sense of humor. Instead, he commends the dishonest steward because he acted shrewdly. And that parable has challenged Christians ever since, because Jesus didn't explain it. And he doesn't need to. The parable only has one point. And he explained the point like this. He said, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Use worldly wealth to make friends for yourself. See, Jesus is saying that there's a place for money in our lives. It would be foolish to imagine we could get by without money in a society like ours. And there are some things that only money can do. Only money can put a roof on our heads. Food in our tummies. Fill up our cars with gas. Try to do those things without money. It's impossible, isn't it? There's a place for money in our lives, and Jesus knew that. Jesus was a most practical man. He knew there are some things that only money can do, but he's saying we are in deep weeds if money has first place in our lives. Money is a great servant, but a terrible master. A church member came to the pastor's study one day. The pastor could see that the man was deeply troubled. The man said, Pastor, I need to talk to you. I feel so empty. I'm so dried up inside. I'm scared. I just came from the doctor's office, and he told me I have only 6 months at best to live. And after I left the office, I realized I have no spiritual resources, no inner strength to cope with this. I've got nothing to fall back on, to lean against. Many people would be surprised to hear me say that, because I have made a lot of money. People think I'm a success not only at making money, but at being a strong, powerful person. You know, I'm poor in the things that count the most. I see it now. Put my faith in the wrong things, and the truth is I'm spiritually destitute. I could pick up the phone, call any bank in this city, and borrow any amount of money to do whatever I wanted just based on my name. I guess there's some things you can't buy or borrow. The guy's material bank was overflowing, but his spiritual bank was empty. Is that your situation? The dishonest steward at least understood that money is a means. It's not an end. He didn't take his boss's money for himself, did he? He didn't hoard it up. He used it to buy favor with his friends. He didn't want to be all alone without a job in that harsh world where people were fortunate if they could even eke out a subsistence living day by day. The really big question that our gospel lesson raises is, do you own your money or does your money own you? The 18th century evangelist John Wesley understood the spiritual struggle many, many people have with the place of money in their lives. Here was the irony of his ministry. The Wesleyan revivals were turning people, many of whom had serious drinking problems, into sober-minded, hard-working, responsible individuals. In fact, some of Wesley's converts became so successful they began letting their firm commitment to Christ slide. They allowed their success, their affluence, to become their God. And in reality, they were as lost as they were when Christ first touched their lives. Wesley saw only one solution. 3 simple yet powerful words. Earn all you can. Save all you can. Give all you can. Wesley taught, gain all you can by honest industry. Use all possible diligence in your calling. Gain all you can by honest industry. Use all possible diligence in your calling. Any of you got any problems with that one? But have you considered that you have a calling in life? You know, we often talk about pastors being called, but have you thought that God has given you a calling? All disciples are called to use their gifts and their talents in ways that accomplish God's best purpose for their lives and help fulfill God's life-giving purpose in the world. Seeing our work as a calling from God puts the charge to earn all we can in the larger context of our work. It's not just earning money for earning money's sake, but to earn it for the higher purpose of fulfilling God's intentional calling for our lives. Remember the passage from Proverbs 6, reminding of the need for hard work. Wesley would go on to teach that we need to gain all we can by common sense. Interesting thing about common sense is if it's common, then other people ought to have that sense, right? And that means we need to make sure that our financial sense is common. We need to gain wisdom from others who've been there and done that. And it's really interesting that a lot of that, I mentioned this last Sunday. If you were here, I'm going to repeat it. If you weren't, you're going to hear it for the first time, unless you watched the video on the internet. But I can't get over the fact that church people will talk about all sorts of things, including now politics, even though that's kind of nauseating. And their sex lives with each other, but they won't talk about money. They won't talk about how they make it, how they save it, how they give it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the financial scammers are out there, the folks doing the Ponzi schemes and everything else. You know what their biggest pool of victims is? People who share the same faith. Affinity, they call it affinity investing, and it's affinity scamming. Use common sense. Make sure others are, that you're gaining from the wisdom of others. Gain all you can without paying more for it than it's worth. You know, this past week was great. I am just beside myself. After 49 years, the Cubs finally won the World Series. Hallelujah! Okay? I resisted the urge to pray while the game was going on, but I did offer a prayer of thanksgiving after the final out. Okay? But, okay? Go back a slide, Larry. Okay? I was not going to pay thousands of dollars for a ticket to see the game. You know, I realized that was a rare occasion. Hopefully it will be less rare in future years. But, if, you know, really people paying that much to sit and watch a baseball game. And I love baseball. But that's paying more for something than it's worth. And our culture, our nation, you know, we're like the world's leader in the consumption of luxury goods. How many times do we buy things just so we can say, I paid a boatload of money for that? Okay. Now, next, though, we need to earn all we can, but not at the expense of our health. We need Sabbath rest. There is a good, godly reason. God built that into the cycle that God knew we needed. When I was practicing law, Sunday afternoon was a 6.5 work day. I went to church on Sunday morning, but I'd often head down into the office in the basement or into the office in the city. Work on Sunday. It's not sustainable long term. And there are other things that we can do. I realize that there are some dirty and there's some dangerous jobs, but sometimes we need to stop and say, am I mortgaging my health in order to make money? And if we're working all the overtime, all the double time, if we're working 2 or 3 jobs at a time, if we're not taking time to rest, we are endangering our health in the pursuit of money. And then we need to earn all we can, but not at the expense of our soul. Do no work, Wesley said, that is not consistent with a good conscience. There's only one time. Well, I remember when I was in law school, I needed a car because I was in law school in Virginia, and my family was back here in northern Indiana at the time. And Dad went to a car dealer that was a member of the church, and he picked out the right car for me. It was this big, ugly orange Buick boat. But it was in sound mechanical condition, and it certainly was within my financial means. But I looked at that and said, oh no, and I saw this beautiful little robin's egg blue Chevy Vega sitting there. That's what I wanted. But I was going to have to take out a loan to buy that. And my mother, very practical person, said, how are you going to pay for that? I said, well, when I get back, I'll get a job. What kind of a job? Oh, it's a college town. I know. I can always get a job tending bar. That is the only time I ever made my mother cry. Because my mother didn't touch a drop. And she thought that that was going to endanger her son's soul. The good news is I got there. I didn't get a job tending bars. Yeah, I'm not that much of a stick in the mud, but I was able to find work working for local attorneys instead. There are some jobs that as Christ followers we probably shouldn't have. Some things we shouldn't do. There was a young man in the church that I served down in Clarksville, Indiana. Mike Heeb. Now, Mike was an interesting sort. He worked for a big-time nursery in that area, and really loved it because he liked growing things and keeping them growing and getting his hands dirty and all this. And then he came in and he said, I have been informed that I'm supposed to do cuttings off these plants, which were, I guess, patented, and therefore there should have been royalties paid to the patent holder for these plants. And he said, they're asking me to do something that's unethical. And it's illegal. And I'm not going to do it. And he quit his job. Had 2 little ones at home at the time, and the wife was pregnant with number 3. Everything turned out well for Mike eventually, but I had so much respect for him because he refused to take action that was not consistent with a good conscience. Next, we need to earn all we can, but not at the expense of our neighbor. Yeah, it may be a dog-eat-dog world for a lot of people, but as Christ followers, we're called to love our neighbor as ourselves. It is godly to make money in ways that do benefit others, but not if it takes advantage of them. And in sum, we need to earn all we can as good, faithful stewards in ways that honor God. If we can just keep that last part of that in our minds as we go about our day-to-day commercial activity, our earning, our spending, our giving, does this honor God? And I think we're on the right track. Will you pray with me? Well, God, we like Mr. Wesley's instructions to earn all we can, but some of the ways he works that out do challenge us. Give us the grace we need to be the best stewards we can be, and in all ways to honor you. We ask this in Jesus' name.